Hello and welcome to Season 1 of Farotech's Digital Marketing Masterclass, a podcast dedicated to collecting the insights of the marketing world's leading thought leaders to teach you the ideal systems on how to generate leads, nurture leads into clients, and then convert clients into raving fans of your company, your brand, and your vision. Our guest today is a globally recognized keynote speaker, educator, business consultant, and author. With clients ranging from Adidas to the U.S. Air Force, he has been an expert marketing, PR, and sales professional for over 30 years, and he provides consulting services as Executive Director of Schaefer Marketing Solutions. He has written 9 best-selling books which have been used as textbooks for over 70 universities, and his latest book, The Cumulative Advantage, How to Build Momentum for Your Ideas, Business, and Life Against All Odds, explores the art and science of momentum. Internet, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Mark Schaefer. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm so delighted to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So what was really funny is we were having a talk before this thing about all of the things that we could talk about. You were like, is this going to be like a 2-hour interview? And I was just like, in my mind, I'm just like, you know what? There's so much I want to talk to you about because I feel like you've had an incredible career. Your books are just amazing. And I want to kind of talk. There's so much I want to talk to you about. But
well, there's so much I want to discuss.
Again.
I've got lots of ideas.
Yep. Great. So let's dive in. My favorite quote from the book, Mark Schaefer, the man whose career has been drastically shaped by a spacecraft explosion and a nearly record-breaking earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack that? How did that all happen?
Well, the point of the story really is that we're really all forged by random events. And there's sort of this myth, especially in America, of, the American dream, where if you work hard and, you keep your nose clean, that, you can become a millionaire. And look, I'm not taking away anybody away from anybody who works hard and sacrifices. I mean, I like to think I'm that person too, but the fact of the matter is there's also a lot that goes on in the background. And what I wanted to do in this book is I wanted to create a book of hope, because the fact is that in Cumulative Advantage, it's about creating momentum. And a lot of people may not have the advantage of a college education or $1 million in the bank, but that doesn't mean you can't get something started. That doesn't mean you can't, create something and create some momentum. And so, the story I told in my book is that my life could have been dramatically different if the space shuttle had not blown up. Because I was working on a big project that depended on a satellite that was being carried by the space shuttle. And then I talk in another story about how Twitter was failing as a company. It was on its last legs. And then there was an earthquake in San Francisco, and the power lines were down, and everybody had to communicate through Twitter. And so all of a sudden it became a sensation because people were figuring it out. And my first book was about how to use Twitter. Twitter certainly has changed, my life. I've got this weird blue bird. I don't even know where I found this. It's this great big bird. It's about the size of a basketball that I've got sitting in one of our bedrooms. And I use that as like this icon. I tell people that this is the house that Twitter built, right? Because Twitter had such a big impact on my life. And that was my very first book. And it never would have happened without an earthquake. It's weird to think about, but we're all forged by these different random events in our lives. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because some people are in a position in their lives where they just don't have those advantages and they need a little help.
Yeah. And did you ever get to talk to Jack Dorsey? Tell him.
I have never.
Never.
I'm not on his call list yet.
Is that right? So, we're going to be talking about a couple different things. If you are a Mark Schaefer groupie like I am, we're going to talk a little bit about your Content Shock, the blog, and it's also a part of your book.
Sure.
We're also going to talk about one of your newest blogs about competition. So if you can unpack Content Shock, I think you wrote Content Shock, that blog, in 2017?
2014.
It's been a while, right?
2014.
14.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just give a real quick synopsis of that?
Well, it ended up being the biggest blog post I ever wrote, and some people say it was really controversial. I never considered it controversial because to me it was just common sense. And the idea behind the post was that in our world, in any human system, in any economic system, in any natural system, whenever there's too much of something or too little of something, then the dynamics and the economics change. And one of the things that certainly drives marketing is content. And you've just got to think through the implications. What happens when there's too much content? Now, that was not necessarily on everyone's mind in 2014. Content was still a bit of a novelty. If you had a blog or if you had a YouTube channel or a podcast, it was still kind of a special thing. There weren't that many companies that did that. But as I witnessed the perpetuation of these ideas, and I saw how content was starting to fill up these competitive niches, it becomes harder to compete. It either costs more to create better content to stand out, or it costs more to promote the content to help it be seen and shared. And so something has to give. And I forecast that, look, for some businesses, they're not going to be able to do this. They're not going to be able to keep up. So let me give you one small example from my own life. For many years, I was a contributor to the Harvard Business Review, and I would propose an article to the editors, and I had maybe 1 out of every 3 accepted because, it's a prestigious publication and they don't take everything, but about 1 out of 3, they said, yeah, good job, Mark, we'll use this one. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't getting anything through. Nothing was being approved. So I talked to the editor, and the editor said, well, here's what's happened. It sort of has caught on, this idea that if companies can create content for the Harvard Business Review, it helps their authority, it helps their prestige. So what's happening is there are now agencies. There are agencies that create authoritative content for executives. And she said, you're competing now against entire agencies creating content for these executives. And it's so well researched and it's so well written that we just have to run it. She said the content you're creating certainly would have been accepted 2 or 3 years ago, but there's so much competition now that your articles just aren't getting through. So that is a perfect example of content shock. Is what are my options? Do I hire an agency to work on this stuff? I can't afford that. Do I pay off people at Harvard Business Review? But you can sort of see this through the lens of a small business that's trying to compete with businesses that have, almost infinite resources. The company with the biggest wallet is going to win. Small businesses are going to be left out, and that is exactly what is happening. No question about it. I was right. And even the people who disagreed with me, and these are the people who are like the content evangelists, right? They've all apologized to me. All but one. But one, actually. All but one.
I guess we'll... And I won't say who that is, right?
Yeah. We'll have to talk about that after the show.
I think one of the things that is interesting about that is it kind of leans towards your Matthew effect, which we're going to talk about in a bit, and the fact that the people that, what you refer to maybe even as the junkyard dogs, maybe that's more of the SEO conversation, but the people that have the army, can shoot more bullets.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? It's just,
Well, I hadn't really connected the dots in that way, Christopher, but it's a good analogy. And, I'm really sort of, kind of down and a little skeptical about SEO these days. And it's kind of a long story to get into, but I just think that SEO has changed so much over the last 5 years that it's really, really hard, again, for small businesses to compete, because the businesses with the most resources in any niche are going to win. It's this junkyard dog reference that you mentioned, that if you're not in the top, let's say, 3 search engine results, you're invisible, basically, right? You're invisible. And you can work and work and work and work and work. And the people that win the top 2 search engine results, those are going to be the junkyard dogs of your business, right? They're going to be big and mean and bad, and they're going to fight. They're going to be knocking each other out in this endless battle of keywords. It's never going to end. And take a look at like someone like me. Now, I'm well known in my industry. I've created a ton of content over more than a decade. I've written more than 3,000 blog posts. I've had a podcast for 9 years. I've written 9 books. And if you search like digital marketing consultant, where do you think I show up? I don't know, but it's not in the top 2 or 3, because the junkyard dogs are going to win, right? And I'm not a junkyard dog. So a better option today is to build authority. Now, you said, one of your comments, you said you were a groupie, right? That's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I want. I want to earn Christopher Carr's trust. I want to earn it. All right? If I earn your trust, Chris, I don't need SEO. I don't need Google. I don't need anything. All I need is you to stay connected to me, and someday you're going to have me on your show, right? Or someday you're going to hire me to help you with something, or you're going to hire me to speak at your event, or you're going to buy my books, and that's how it works. So I'm not fighting. I'm not the Google junkyard dog. I'm someone who wants to be helpful, wants to be generous, wants to give away all my best ideas so that I can earn the trust of the people who will create business benefits for me, like you're doing right now.
Well, that transitions to the blog that you most recently wrote, and it was saying, actually, before I do that, let me go back and say this one thing that dealt with the content shock. So I remember it's a mutual friend of ours, Chad Pollitt. I'm a huge fan of the guy. Love him. What he was saying, and this is how we met, was I'm a massive movie buff, by the way. Like, so I've seen the most popular ones, and I've even seen the most obscure ones. And there's this scene in a movie called Glory. Have you ever seen Glory? It's about the first. Yeah. So the 54 finally gets to fight, and they finally get to fight, and the Confederates are coming, and they all shoot their guns, and it looks like they have this raving success, and everyone's flipping out like they won in just one shot. And Denzel Washington is looking around like they're going to come back. You know what I mean? He's the only one not celebrating, but he's looking around astonished. I was at a spot, this was probably around 2013, where my agency was pumping out, I don't even want to tell you how many blogs, but I know that my largest client I ever signed asked for 3,000 pieces of content in a single year.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. And then, so we signed the contract. I love the money, love the contract, willing to just build the mill.
Yeah.
But then I went to this conference, Chad speaking, And I had already been doing the math. I'm like, what if there's just 5 other agencies like me? What if there's 10? What if there's 100? I was
Yeah.
like, the math doesn't add up. And so I'm not celebrating anymore, but nobody's talking about it. And the company that I'm partners with, their answer for it was make more content. It was
Yeah.
like literally, you know what I mean?
Add
And I was just
add to
like,
the noise, add to the chaos, spend more money, and you're still not going to be the junkyard dog.
yeah.
And
And so,
honestly,
yeah.
Google sees through that. I mean, they really do. I mean,
Mhm.
everything you see from the search engine analysts is all about quality, relevance, resonance. And I mean, I don't really know how Google, completely assesses that, but it's not about volume. It's not about pedal to the metal. It's about really being consistent and really being helpful. And, if I can earn your trust, then I think the things I'm doing to earn your trust are also earning Google's trust.
Yeah. What I find is when I really like an author, once I like them, I backlink to them all the time. It's like my way of saying thanks.
Yeah. Well,
For
you're
being
raising
good
my
at
expectations now.
yeah. But what's funny about that is that another friend of ours, or he was recently on the show, is Andy Crestodina, and he has these amazing statistics of blog statistics and stuff like that. And he has this terrible chart about like between only 1% and 3% of all content on the web is like link worthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning we pump out so much content and nobody links to it.
Yeah,
You
and
know what
and
I mean?
and by the way, I mean I love Andy, and I'm a huge Andy Crestodina fan. But it's the problem is that people are creating content because they're afraid not to. I mean that is flat out just the ugly truth. The most content is is not working. It's not being seen. It's let alone being linked to, right? There was a statistic that showed. I mean, it comes up every year in research that about 80% of content on a B2B website is never seen. So people are drinking the Kool-Aid and they're saying we got to do content marketing. We got to pump this stuff out. But the economic value of content that's not seen and shared is zero. So
Yeah.
you're wasting your money. And I mean, and SEO doesn't solve it. Paid promotion doesn't solve it, because you can trick people into clicking on a link, but you can't trick them into reading it, consuming it, sharing it, right? That's the whole key. The key to digital marketing success is you've got to get your content to move. You've got to get it to be seen and shared. And I wrote a whole book about that called The Content Code, which is like, you got to create great content. Sure, you've got to nurture a great audience, but you also need to build a competency on getting that content to move, because that's the real economic value of digital marketing. Content that
Yeah.
moves.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was just even thinking about in preparation for this is that in the COVID era, as of March of 2021, I was doing some quick math here, trying to get it right. I'm looking at maybe 6.6 million businesses. Let's pretend like I'm going to dismiss all of the businesses that are going to be business to consumer and say it's 50%. That's 303,300,000 businesses. If they all did what you did, which you blog on an average of what, once a week?
Yeah, once or twice a week.
That would be 156 million blogs just from the businesses that were built in the COVID era.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they all did it once a week.
Well, I
I'm
saw
saying that
I saw a statistic that that the amount of content on LinkedIn, just on LinkedIn, has doubled in the last 12 months. And it was it was pretty overwhelming before, and it's doubled in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Is it
You know what
working? I mean, I don't know.
Mhm.
Has people's attention span doubled in the last 12 months? It's
Yeah.
content
My
shock. It
advice.
really is. It's like, okay, if you're going to be pumping out that content, that means you've got to be twice as good this year than you were last year just to stay even.
You know what my advice is? My most popular blog that I had this year was like how to do marketing in the pandemic era, and I was early to it. It was written in
Mm-hmm.
it was like April 1st of the
Yeah.
pandemic, and I said
Mm-hmm.
your subject matter experts are standing right next to your sales guy,
Mm-hmm.
and when your blog team goes to write your blogs, they beg for the just any moment they can get with your subject matter expert.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one time in history where your subject matter expert is probably not selling because nobody knows what's going to happen here.
Right.
Lock him in a room and ask him every question that his clients have ever asked him, that every
Mm-hmm.
feature, every objection, everything. Is like this is the golden era of getting everything out of that SME's head
Mm-hmm.
and at least stockpile it. I don't mean you need to create content for it all.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is the time because it'll never be like this again. Eventually, we're going to figure this out, and they're going to be on the sales floor, and your bloggers are going to be guessing what's real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's yeah. So anyway, did they listen? I don't know, Mark. It's compelling to me. So let's dive into your book. One of my favorite quotes from the book was saying, even being great is insufficient in the face of overwhelming competition.
Mm.
Redefining the limits of excellence every day.
Right. Well, it's funny, I'm doing this interview from a hotel room, and I gave a talk today to a big national association of attorneys. And I mean, it's not just marketers. It's every single business is facing the same problem, that there's only one question, Chris, that is on the mind of every business in the world. One question, and this is it. How can we be heard? How can we be heard? How can we be found? How can we be discovered? Is anybody seeing us? That is it. How do we transcend this content shock? How do we transcend this overwhelming world of information density to be the signal instead of the noise? How do we rise above that noise? And that's what led me to write this book, because there aren't any easy answers anymore. And so it's really, it led me to this idea of momentum. If you're stuck, if you're great, look, a lot of people out there, these content evangelists, right? They say, oh, the problem isn't that there's too much content. There's too much bad content. Here's what I have to say to that. Bullshit. You can bleep that out if you want to. But it's bullshit. It really is, because the content out there is fantastic. It's the golden age of content. You can find amazing, amazing, breathtaking content on any subject you want. You can learn anything. You can do anything. So to say that the problem is there's too much bad content is patently false and self-serving, because the problem is there's too much great content. And so now we've got to be even greater. And that led me to this idea of momentum. If you're stuck and you're doing your best work, even if you're great, how do you move to this next level? And it really has to do with momentum. How do we create momentum to get unstuck? And that's what Cumulative Advantage is about.
So, right out of college, I moved to Honduras. Hurricane Mitch just happened. Got into a passion for the developing world.
Mm-hmm.
From Honduras, eventually went over to Africa.
Oh,
Also
boy.
played a ton of soccer. Love soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw some players in Africa, and I know what I'm looking for, and I know some of the intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be some of the best players on the world stage that I could even dream about. They are that good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that they are literally in the middle of Africa and nobody knows they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Remember coming home and telling people, and they're like, gosh, I wonder how many amazing talents are there. Then I come home, I start a content marketing company, and I literally sometimes wonder, like, how many marketing geniuses are out there.
Yeah.
But some of the things you mentioned in your book, right, are the ones that found to leverage mentors, to find ways to have these sonic boom moments. You know what I mean? In other words, like, there's that person out there that is a genius, way smarter than I'm going to be,
Yeah.
but he just hasn't gotten some of the tenets in your book. And
Yeah.
I hate to throw around the word luck, but that's what I think that's what I mean. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I think they just aren't lucky enough.
I think the idea behind my book is, what if you don't have luck? What if you don't have that advantage? Is that so? Here's an example. So I was working with a very talented woman, and she was helping me with some content and assisting me with some projects. And she told me the story that she wrote this really great blog post, and she was so proud of it, and it went nowhere. Nobody saw it. It's just like your soccer players in the middle of Africa. So then she built relationships. She did some networking, and she got a mentor at one of the big sites. It might have been Search Engine Journal. I can't remember which one it was. But she submitted this exact same article to one of these bigger sites, and it went crazy. It went viral. She became a star, right? So she had to reach out, ask for some help, build some new connections, and that's what kind of got her unstuck. And so there are a lot of different ways to do that in our world, and I think that's why I'm so proud of this book, Chris, is because there's nothing in this book that anybody can't do. You don't need to have $1 million in the bank. You don't need to have the biggest wallet. You don't need to have an Ivy League degree. You don't need to have connections with all these influencers. That once you know this pattern of how momentum is created over and over and over, you'll never see the world the same, because every successful person, every successful business that you learn of has this same pattern of momentum. It happens the same way. So if you're aware of it, if you know how it works, then you can start putting it to work for you. And it's happening. It's happening. It's amazing where this book is going. There was a famous economist. He's famous to me, at least. Not too many people can name any famous economist, but he's a pretty famous economist. And he read my book, and he actually started constructing like economic models for each of the 5 steps in the book to show. I didn't know this because I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
But there were actually like well-known formal economic models for each part of the book. And I just sort of simplified it into this pattern, which again has already kind of been proven in different parts of the world, like economics. And so hopefully I'm unleashing new ideas and creating new momentum for lots of people around the world.
And that actually that's the one part about this book that felt very different from some of your other ones. And maybe this is an unfair assessment, but I felt like this book, more than anything, was written for marketers, and then also written for people that aren't in marketing, that maybe they're just a business owner, or maybe it's literally just people in their life that are. I feel like this is one of those books that's probably the most agnostic thing that I've read of yours, because I always think of you're the master of marketing, and you know what I mean? But I find so many of the tenets of this, you can be an economist. You can be an economist. You know what I mean? You can do those things.
It is a different kind of a book, especially if you make it till the end. Chapter 10, there's sort of a surprise in there for everybody. And I have this good friend down in Australia, and he interviewed me for his podcast, and he said, Mark, I just want to congratulate you on this book. He said, this is really a wonderful marketing book, but doggone it, you sneaky devil, you are also teaching us how to be a better human being. Yeah. So I mean, it does go some different directions. I was interviewed by another couple of people, and the lady started the show by saying, "Mark, this is the first business book I've ever read that when I got through the last chapter, I cried." And the guy who was her, interviewing me with her, said, "Yeah, me too." So I didn't expect that sort of reaction. But this book, it really is having not just a practical application with people, but having a very emotional connection with people too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, the fact that, some of the things that you've experienced in your life and the journeys that you've seen, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's probably almost the older I get, I start to just see these things that I have young kids, but I'm starting to see the world in a very different view than I did even, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I just see these concepts and, you know what I mean? Like, I explain them to my team. It's a marketing company, and I explain them to my wife, and I'm like, they're the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, to my marketing people, I explain it in a marketing way, but you know what? There's a lot of truth above and beyond this for what I think about how I raise my kids or how I do those things. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I love that type of stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive into some of the things in the book. One of the things I was joking around about is the fact that we're going to talk a little bit about the power of unstoppable momentum. But what I really liked is how you sort of go into the origins of innovation. And you call it the one small spark. And I try to get on. I have 2 podcasts myself, and then I try to get on one as well. Podcasting is kind of my my way of just sort of getting my name out there. And a lot of times they'll ask me, how did I start my business? And it's like the weirdest story ever in the aspect of 20 years ago, Chris Casanova Carr thought it's 1999. Nobody knows about websites. I mean, they know about websites, but I had broken up with a girl and thought, hey, you know what? If I build her a website to put her art on, that's going to be the missing link, and I'm going to get this girl back. Never got the girl back. Hired a guy. He couldn't build the website. Tried to hire another guy. 6 months later, I'm not even thinking about the girl.
Yeah.
But I'm like figuring out how to build websites myself. And now I have payroll every 2 weeks that gives me heartburn and kidney stones.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a friend. He said his digital agency started when the spark, the thing that changed everything for him, was when he had he injured his leg in a softball game. There was do you remember Clout? There was this early software, right? It was really the beginning of the whole influencer movement, and this was a software that could measure how your content spread on the web and sort of assign a number to you in terms of how influential you are. And everybody hated it pretty much, but the founder of the company, I wrote about him in a book. I did a big business case about him, and he got that idea because he had jaw surgery, and his jaw was wired shut, and he couldn't leave his apartment in Manhattan for weeks and weeks, and all he did was sit there and study social media and see like who was sharing whose content, and this idea just snapped into place that really was the beginning of influence marketing in our world today. So yeah, all these sparks really are almost always random events.
Yeah. And so you had talked about Tim Ferriss in your book. And read the book, guys. If you're watching this podcast, read the book. I mean, Tim doesn't break up with the girl. It's almost like remember like Back to the Future, where like Doc's like, don't change anything because you never know what could happen.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. But I mean, when I was writing the book, I was trying to find examples to demonstrate that even the heroes we hold up there, these iconic figures in businesses. One of my favorite examples from the book was Nike. I mean, Nike started because someone was watching his wife make waffles. She pulled out a waffle from a waffle iron, and he said, wait, that could be the bottom of a shoe, right? And that's how Nike started. And I started exploring Tim Ferriss as a case study because I think he's a very interesting guy and certainly just a success machine. Everything he touches seems to turn to gold. But if you look at where he was in his late 20s, you would never, ever, ever predict where he is today. I mean, he was out of luck. He was out of money. He had lost his girl. He was suffering from depression. And, I'm not saying anything that Tim hasn't said publicly himself. And he went on this sabbatical and just started traveling around Europe. And he got this idea for a book, which, by the way, was rejected by 26 different publishers before it was finally picked up. And it became a huge New York Times bestseller. But you're right. If he hadn't lost his girlfriend, he probably never would have written that book and had the success that he has today.
So if you had the DeLorean,
right,
you pay the girlfriend to get back to him. Now you're in the Oprah stratosphere.
And don't touch anything.
You're going to see some serious shit.
Yeah, that's funny. Because I do think it's very funny how you keep going back. So the breakdown is you go into the 5 tenets, or maybe not the word isn't tenets, but the 5 tenets of what makes you get heard. And then like at the end of each one, you keep saying like, and that's why he's talking to Oprah, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right. Right. It was kind of a big risk. Kind of a big risk I took, sort of like I become one of the characters in my own book. And I was very uncomfortable with that. It was a risk. It really was. It was a risk. I don't know of anybody that's ever done that before, but it kind of worked.
Yeah, I think if you didn't have some of the successes you've had throughout your career, I think that would be a little bit of a leap. But I do think that there's just certain things that you've been able to do, as someone like myself who looks at some of the things that you've done, where like I can definitely see where you're going. But I also see that the tenants, whether you don't have to have nuclear level fame like Tim to adopt these tenants and really just see how things scale. And I thought that was, you know what I mean? Like I personally, I have 20 full-time employees. With subcontractors, I'm around 50. I don't even know what I would do with a certain level of notoriety, fame, or whatever that is, because I don't know whether my machine is strong enough to scale in that way. You know what I mean? And so,
or if you want to.
Things, or if I want to,
right.
I'd love to be able to see my kids, So let's dive into some of the things. You can, if there's certain parts of this that you like, we can focus there. I'm going to rip through some of the 5 tenets as I remember them, how I wrote them down. Number one, well, actually, you know what? With it being around 5 o'clock, I want to just I'm going to keep it at the macro level of.
I think the idea in the book that is probably the most revolutionary and the one that is really impacting people the most is this idea of the seam, right? Especially now during this pandemic, because business strategy, when I was a young guy, used to be a 250-page document and a 5-year plan, and you've done all this research and blah, 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 and then you set the course and you dig in, and that's your lane for, the next 5 years. And what strategy really is today is looking at what are the advantages that you have in your life? What are the resources that you have? What are the ideas that you have? What are the connections you have? I use an example in the book about Bill Gates. How did Bill Gates become Bill Gates? Is because he had access to early computer prototypes when he was a teenager that nobody else had. he was doing computer coding before anybody else, right? So he didn't have money in the bank. He didn't have a college education, but he did have some advantage that he was able to parlay. Now, how do you parlay that? First of all, he didn't just have an idea, he pursued the idea. Has to be a quest, right? Second, it fit a shift in the status quo, a fracture in the status quo. The time for his idea of an operating system was right. Now, so business opportunity is dependent on some shift. It's creating new or underserved customer needs. Quick example. So when the pandemic hit, I got sick. My wife was an early adopter of the pandemic. She got sick. She was on a ski trip, brought COVID home. I got sick. We were sick or quarantined for 2 months. We couldn't go to the store. So we subscribed to HelloFresh, right? HelloFresh delivers food to your door. It teaches you new recipes. And we decided, Chris, after we had been using this for a while, that we liked it. So can you imagine a portion of our food budget is now going to a food distribution channel that I didn't even know existed in January of 2020. That is profound because there was a fracture in the status quo. I couldn't go to the store. HelloFresh jumps in, right? Pow, boom, boom. Go as far as you can. Go as fast as you can. Scale, right? This is your time. This is your opportunity. And they've done a very good job, but there's been a lot of other competitors too. So the idea of how momentum is really created depends on being aware of all these changes going on in the world. And it's an unprecedented time of opportunity because arguably the pandemic is the biggest fracture in the status quo in the history of our country. Everything is changing. Where we work, how we learn, how we connect, how we teach our children, how we eat, how we work out, how we commune. It's everything is being reinvented, and those are all business opportunities.
Mark, you're a legend.
Oh, thank you.
I kept looking at the time, and it was making me sadder and sadder because I know you have a hard stop. Let me just say thank you very much. If you, to my listeners, if you haven't bought the book, buy the book. Take your picture with the book, send it to Mark, and you might make his LinkedIn page. All right. But Mark, it has been an honor. One of the bigger privileges I've had of ever doing this podcast. So thank you so much for joining me. If people wanted to find out a little bit more about the things that you do, can you just kind of, how would they find out about you?
Well, it's really easy. People usually can't remember how to spell Schaefer, but they can remember businessesgrow.com. That's my website. And at Businesses Grow, you can find the books we talked about today, my blog, my podcast, all my social media connections. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I follow everybody back. And so we can stay connected that way. And I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. I will give you this warning, is that when you buy Mark's first book, you're going to probably buy them all. I found myself like going from one to one to one. I'm like, yeah, no, this has been awesome, Mark. I really, really appreciate it. And as always, I'm a super fan. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I hope we can do it again soon and complete the rest of your questions. We'll do hour two of the 2-hour interview.
That's right. Thanks again.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for watching this video. What I wanted to do now is share something with you that we believe is very special. What we wanted to share is something we call the Farotech unique process. What you'll see on this page is this is our entire roadmap that we've built over the last 21 years. We implement this process for all of our inbound marketing clients, and we believe that if you implement some of these strategies into your own marketing, you're going to have tremendous results. We've developed this page to be not only in video format, but also text and chapter format as well. When done effectively, this process is going to help your organization build marketing systems that generate leads, nurture leads into clients, and then convert those clients into raving fans of your product, service, mission, and vision. If you have any questions or concerns about anything that you've read, or you would like to kind of walk through this with one of our specialists, please reach out to us. You can do that at info@farotech.com. So once again, the domain to find out our unique process is farotechuniqueprocess.com.